Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Intersections. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you're joining us from. And actually, pop in the chat where you're joining us from. I'd love to know that. And I'm your host. If this is your first time, I'm your host, Meenakshi Iyer, founder and principal of Nostra Solutions and Services, which is a boutique future work oriented coaching, training, and consulting practice specializing in partnering with mid-career technology leaders, women in tech, and folks like myself who speak English as an additional language. We partner with our clients in shaping their people and change leadership journeys. And I'm physically located in Virginia, in the East Coast of the US. And exploring intersections, I started this, I want to say more than a year ago now, as a conversation space that's dedicated to unpacking intersections as we co-create a future work that works for everyone. And why intersections? Because I personally think intersections are really fantastic spaces and places that offer vantage points to understand different perspectives. And so every episode, I meet with a guest and we unpack an intersection that's closest to them, and so that's what we've been doing at Exploring Intersections ever since we started. And this is episode 19. And today we are focused on the intersection of leadership and coaching, right in my backyard, because I serve as a leadership coach myself. And so the conversation really is around what do these sort of, and I mentioned this in my post a couple of days ago, that these two words seem to be sort of overused a little bit and cliched to a large extent, but there's so much value at this intersection. And I'm biased because I'm a coach, but outside of that, I also know from other folks such as my clients and the leaders that I interact with that there is so much power and impact at this intersection. So that's why we're going to talk about that today. So once again, welcome. If you're joining us live, you can catch us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, any of those channels. Again, pop in the chat where you're joining us from and what is it that you're looking forward to hearing today. And today, our guest is the wonderful Sarita Bahl, who is based in Mumbai in India and is joining us from there right now. Thank you so much for being here today, Sarita.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I know we've been talking about exploring intersections for a little over a month now, and I'm so happy that we finally this worked out. So I want to share a little bit about how you and I met, and then I'd love to invite you to share a little bit more about your professional journey and what got you to this intersection of leadership and coaching. Yeah. So Sarita and I first met again online, and we were just talking about that, and we were like, I was asking Sarita, I knew it was online because we would get to meet in person, and it was in the coaching, one of the coaching communities, and Sarita reminded me that it was through one of Coach Arya's webinars, and we've stayed in touch for a while now, and I've constantly been inspired by the work that Sarita does and the many hats that she wears. So she's a communications, social impact, and PR executive. She's a certified ICF certified coach and an EMCC certified senior practitioner. She's also a certified and trained mentor. And so when I wanted to explore this particular intersection of leadership and coaching, actually, this was the first thing that you were the first person that popped in my mind, Sarita, when I was thinking about this. And I'm so happy that you're here today to unpack this intersection for us. I would like to actually start off by really inviting you to share a little bit more about yourself, your professional journey thus far, and what got you to this intersection. Over to you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Meenakshi, for giving me this wonderful platform. I still can't believe you and I have not met.
Yes.
I think I know you since so long. Right? There's some people with whom there's an instant connect,
Yes.
um, and you just take off as though you've known. And I think you are one of those human beings. I love being in touch with, talking, chatting, or reading what you also write. And I'm so looking forward to this particular session because it took me back to my own journey, right? Where am I seeing this intersection? And I must confess, I had not given this intersection much thought till you put it out there. So it really made me introspect and see. So yeah, where do I begin from? Because it's like almost 35 plus years of work.
Hmm.
There's so much that has happened. In fact, when I look back, when I started my professional journey, I don't think I ever aspired to be a leader.
Hmm.
I didn't even know what a leader was. I just passed, and I graduated in social sciences. So I went into social work, the social development sector. And I think the definition of leader over there is very different from a leader that you see in a corporate.
Hmm.
Those are leaders who work on the ground to create an impact of a different kind, who make a difference of a different kind. And I don't think I was ever ambitious career wise
Hmm.
that time, but I know I wanted to work. I wanted to be financially independent and figure myself out and all of that. And so that when I look back from there to here, that journey itself has been so very fascinating to me also.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and I want to take a pause here and just say something I believe in. It's that it's my personal life that has shaped me professionally.
Hmm.
A lot of people think that who you are professionally shapes you as a person, but I don't agree to that. I believe
Hmm.
how you are as a person and how you show up as a person shapes you professionally. And I think coaching sort of, emphasized that again and again and again. So
Hmm.
unknowingly, when I believed it was the me person who was showing up professionally, I never realized that coaching would also tell me the same thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that was a revelation, that what am I believing? Hey, look, this is what coaching is about. So I think maybe that's why I took to coaching like a duck takes to water. Because I know all of this. This is what I believe in. I relate to this. I followed this in my own life, but maybe at a very subconscious level and not aware of it. Right. So yeah. So professionally, I've worn a lot of different hats, but behind every professional hat has been a personal journey, story that has shaped me up. And I think that would take one whole big session as to how that. So maybe some other time. But I think a couple of things that come up from there. And if you give me permission, I would love to share those things which I
Of course.
learned.
Of course.
Jump into something you don't know.
Hmm.
And that's what my personal journey taught me. You have to go out there, do something, prove something to yourself. You can do something new. So I think it was all about me. And I think I carry that today also. And, very interestingly, I think that somehow I see that intersection coming in as leadership also. Take a risk, get into the unknown, move out of your comfort zone. So I have done that multiple times, and a lot of times the reasons have been personal, but it's like getting into domain areas of which I have no knowledge, no experience, and no, maybe at that time a lot of self doubt also, but that never stopped me from getting into it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was like we'll see what happens. I don't want to stay back with a regret that I wish I had done it. So I think those were life lessons, personal lessons that shaped me.
Hmm.
That we'll see what's the worst case that can happen. I'll fail. So what? Right. So I think that's who I am as a person, and that's how professionally where I am today is been shaped by that whole my own belief and take a risk, topple the apple cart, Maybe this time let's have oranges instead of apple. And next time maybe mangoes. Who knows? And
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see what. So you said something in your introduction to about me that I wear many hats, and I think that's how it came about.
yeah, yeah.
Because I
And
was
each of those have, it's a two-way street in terms of circumstances shaping you and then you shaping the next um, milestone in your life, right? And Sarita, as you were sharing, the few things that stood out for me, one is when you said, uh, I never aspired to be a leader. I knew I wanted to work for financial independence, but I didn't even know what a leader was. And you just, I went back to my first job, which was like 5 days after I graduated from college in India, and I was like, my goodness, that was the exact same sentiment I had about working, and that's how my mom raised me. It's like you need to finish it. You have to have a degree, you have to have a job, and you have to be financially independent because those were the things she wanted for herself and never was able to accomplish that for herself. Um, but the way you said, I never aspired to be a leader. And I was like, wow, but look at her now, how you show up. And that really resonated with me a lot. And also what you said about your personal life shaping your professional life. And you drew parallels to coaching. And what really popped up in my mind at the point was, how they say master coaches, they talk about, who you are is how you coach,
yes,
right? And that really, so those are some of the things that came up for me. And then you talked about taking risks, go jump into something new. And you drew a parallel to coaching, and I could not agree with you more, because every single coaching conversation is that, because you're responding to what emerges. It's your client's agenda. And it was just beautiful. So I really want to ask you, how have the parallels you drew to coaching, I want to put that back to you in terms of, like, taking risks and it's your client's agenda. How do you uh, practice that as a leader in your day-to-day corporate role?
yeah. For that, I need to go back before how I was as a leader before I became a coach.
That's a good one. And we have Shivani here. Thank you for joining, Shivani.
Thanks, Shivani. That inspires me to share a bit more. Uh, I think if I were to rate myself, I would say I was a terrible leader. The first time I became a leader. When I say leader, people manager,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Right? And you mentioned being an individual contributor. I don't think anybody trains an individual contributor what it means to be a people manager.
Oh, yes.
Today you are an individual man contributor, tomorrow you get promoted, and suddenly you have people reporting into you.
Yes.
What are you supposed to do? How are you to manage? Right? And no amount of corporate training, in-house training can really prepare you. It's like getting married, right? Nothing prepares.
Yes.
Nothing can prepare you for what marriage is or becoming a mother. How many books you may read, you don't know what motherhood really is till you hold the baby in your hands. Right? So being a leader for the first time was exactly that. I found myself drowning,
Mm,
really struggling. I said, whom do I talk to? And I must confess, being a leader is very lonely.
mm,
How do you say what you are going through or not being successful? And to whom do you say? Right? And how do you say? And because all the time you're saying, how are you going to come across? They will then say, why was she promoted, or why did she was she hired?
mm,
Why is she over here if she can't even figure this out? Right? So when you are there holding a function, it can be pretty difficult at times to figure out, and that's where I think the role of mentors come in, and that's why I think that was, I'm digressing a bit, but I think I find my roots of wanting to be a certified mentor from there.
mm,
You
mm,
know, ensuring that I'm able to pull up all those experiences and see. So yeah, so from that part of being a leader to now being a leader after going through coaching, I think couple of things that really, really changed and consciously that I applied. I think one is that golden rule we all coaches swear by: ask and don't tell.
Mm,
I think that changed the dynamics for my team completely, and I could see the empowerment that happened, and I could see the way I was able to focus more on the bigger picture, the strategy piece, or connecting the dots for the team, and the team was able to function on their own. Not that I was away. Right? So I think ask but not tell became my mantra,
mm,
and I attribute a lot of this to coaching, which made me aware of the
mm.
minute you ask, you say begin by why and saying the defensiveness to being curious and saying what, and you see how the answer changes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That was one. Second, when I heard for the first time, and I refused to accept it, Meenakshi, judgmental, being non-judgmental.
Yes.
I felt it was so easy. I realized this is so difficult. And I went back. You know what came up to my son telling me all the time, Mom, you are so judgmental. And I would always argue with him. What rubbish are you saying? And then I had to take a pause.
Mm,
I understood in coaching what non judgmental really means.
mm.
He was right all through. So
So,
sometimes your mirror lies in your house and you don't see yourself.
such a great analogy. Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. Um,
And
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so it's like I realize, and how this thing came up with my son. I'm sorry if I'm digressing into
No,
the
no, no,
person,
not at
but
all.
I think it tells you why I believe the personal shapes you, right? And we would find, because I would be an early riser, I would want my son to get up early. So it was like, I'm like this, why can't you be like that? So not accepting the other person as an individual, as he or she is, was, I think, one of the biggest lessons I learned from him.
Mm,
Respect that, be non-judgmental. If that person has his her own style of talking, learning, listening, whatever, free time, space, whatever, it can't be you as a clone.
mm,
And I think coaching with that hammering of being non-judgmental, listen to your client, don't let your biases, perceptions come in. I think that was one of the second biggest lessons I took, and I apply that at my intersection of leadership. And there
mm,
are times when I fail, I still
mm,
fail sometimes,
mm,
because our own biases and perceptions are so ingrained within us. How do you really let go of them? I think being self-aware is the only way. Acknowledge, yes, I'm feeling judgmental, and I'm feeling judgmental because I have this memory or I have this experience, and I'm bringing it on the table. And as long as I'm self-aware of it, I can stop myself from acting. uh,
yeah,
you know
yeah.
so
That's so well
a lot
said.
of snippets from my personal.
Yeah, and I love how you're actually doing such an amazing job of storytelling because you have your anchors and you're talking about how your personal life has shaped your professional life, and you have these anecdotes and experiences, and you have the lived experience of that, right? Um, I love what you shared about being curious, asking and not telling. And I'm with you, Sarita. I think coaching, uh, co- undergoing coach training, it has actually elevated the quality of all of my conversations.
Mm.
And the focus on being curious and staying curious without judgment. And I'm with you. I struggle with being non-judgmental. I feel like I'm able to do a better job with my clients because I'm wearing the coach hat, but then I struggle with that, with being non-judgmental. And at Coach Arya, they talk about unconditional positive regard, and it's been hard to practice that at all times.
Yeah.
um, I did want to ask you though, what does being judgmental mean to you as a leader?
I can give you a very specific example, which happens very often. I ask someone for some information.
Hmm.
It does not come on time, my expected time. Let me clear, okay? And then all kind of thoughts come up.
Hmm.
Is there no respect for me? Does the person not trust me? Or why is the person behaving so? Do I have to send a reminder? These are my judgments coming
Hmm.
in.
Hmm.
Right? Instead of saying, I trust that person will give me the information, I have to be just a little patient. And not everybody works on the same timelines as I do.
Hmm.
So the judgment comes in. And this takes me back to the first time I realized how terrible I leader was the first time. Let me tell you. And we improve, right, with practice. We can't say the first time we become a leader, we are the best. I don't think anybody, if somebody is saying that, I would take that up
Yeah,
and
it's
say,
like those first pancakes that you make.
yeah. I was in my first year of college, social work, 1984, and the Bhopal gas tragedy
Hmm.
happened.
Yes, Union Carbide. Yep.
Yeah, so my institute was authorized with the government to go into a house-to-house survey of the affected so that they could get reimbursed.
Hmm.
And I was, at that time a person who would put my hand up, first one to comment, first one to talk, and first one to show up. And I said I'll become a leader of the group. And Minakshi, believe me, I think I learned my first leadership lesson there.
Hmm.
Because we were working on deadlines, timelines, you have to complete the survey form. And it was, very traumatic talking to the affected
Yeah.
families over there. And then we had to come back to our hotel, fill up all the survey forms, ensure every data is there, and hand it over to the leader, one of whom was I. So there were multiple groups with multiple leaders. And I couldn't handle delays. I couldn't handle
Hmm.
genuine reasons from people who said that we could not write because we were too overwhelmed. And we were what? We was, I think, 21 years old at
Oh,
that point.
wow.
We were young.
Hmm.
I didn't have the maturity to accept people are not the same.
Hmm.
I think I got my first lesson of what does it really mean to be a leader. It means open to listening,
Hmm.
being empathetic, right? And being there, rallying around with your people.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I never looked at it up as leadership lessons. When I became a professional leader, it all came back. And I wish I had a magician wand at that time which would tell me this is what leadership is. So I feel even if today, if anybody listening to this session of ours and who's at the cusp of being a mid-level man, moving on to a managerial role, picks up something, I think you and I have done our duty towards shaping at least what leadership is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. You said it so beautifully. Uh, and and I'm with you. I don't think we realize that those are actual lessons while we are experiencing it, right? It's the reflecting on the experience that really draws those insights for us. Um, yeah, I love what you said. People are not all the same, right? And we know that inherently, we know that, but knowing that and practicing that, and I loved how you called out the nuance in that as the as your journey. Um, so I want to ask you about your what are some of the other things, like two or three big things that you noticed or realized about leadership as you started your journey of becoming a professional coach?
I think what stays with me, Meenakshi, this is such a beautiful question. And I've discussed this with my son, and we both agree this needs to be spoken and shared.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the vulnerability.
Hmm.
What you go through life, the turmoils that you experience, maybe at a personal level or at a professional level. come across as a human being to your team or to the people around you, not as someone who's inaccessible or someone who's so perfect that from far it looks like he or she is leading the perfect, great life. It's not, right? And I think my lessons came from the whole issue of importance of mental well-being, and it reared its ugly head between my son and I. And we both struggle to find a balance. How do we accept this and then acknowledge it, that it's very important, and then start talking about and start becoming champions about it wherever possible.
Mm,
And, I have had bad days when I've struggled to find a balance on the well-being of my child, and it has reflected in my work.
mm,
And then I have been very honest with my team or with my manager or with my colleagues. Look, today is not the day where I can make a decision. I'm not just up to it.
mm,
Something's bothering me, right? So I think that vulnerability, and it's a little different from being authentic, and you know that and I know that, but that willingness to bare your heart out there and say not every day is hunky dory.
mm, mm,
Right? There are struggles, and we all go through struggles in life. I think that's one big takeaway I take from coaching is the vulnerability of it. It's okay to be vulnerable. I
mm,
think it's quite courageous, in fact, to acknowledge. And I would urge all people aspiring to be leaders or leaders today to say, yes, I don't know this. And it's okay. So why don't we talk about what you know? Let's not talk about what you don't know. Let's talk about what you know. So I my struggle sometimes continues on this, where people don't want to acknowledge, or they want to feel get validated all the time.
mm,
And in coaching how that comes across through various clients, and I find a lot of that in leaders who don't want to say that they are vulnerable.
mm, mm.
They would rather come across that, well, we know everything or we are right.
Yes, so true. I want to first of all acknowledge uh, your courage and vulnerability in sharing this on a public forum. Um, thank you for that. And I think that um, you've made a great call out of being human, the importance of being human, the importance of because you're human, then you are vulnerable. There are things that are outside of your control, and regardless of what title you hold in your professional life, does not exclude you from being human at work, right? And you shared that so poignantly. Thank you for that. Um, you brought up several memories and reflections for me as you shared this. Um, First of all, something that you had said earlier on when you talked about when you started off as a leader, um, and you talked about how asking for help or saying you don't know, that can also put you in a spot. You said people being a leader can be lonely, and people are always sort of expecting you to be good at everything or the best or whatever that is, right? It's a superlative all the time. And and those expectations sort of work against us as leaders too, and that's why we once you get into that leadership role, we are conditioned, socially programmed to believe that we need to know everything. And if we admit not knowing something, that means that we are putting ourselves down in front of the team or in front of the organization, whatever the context may be. But in today's world, that's changing so much, right? I mean, the organizational structures are changing. It's no longer the top down, especially in the knowledge workspace. It's more collaborative. And I made up this term a while ago where I said it's not the know-it-all leader, it's the learn-it-all leader that we need, right? People who are open to doing that, and they are so right that the vulnerability that's required to acknowledge that to yourself, and then the courage to admit it openly, that's such a big deal. And thank you for opening opening up the conversation on so many levels. And I'm seeing some comments here and questions. And I want to take a moment again to welcome anyone that's just now joining us. We are talking to Sarita Bahl at Exploring Intersections and exploring the intersection of leadership and coaching. Sarita has been sharing with us her own journey into leadership and how coaching has had an impact on how she leads people now. And so if you're just now joining us, welcome. And those of you who are watching us live, thank you for taking the time to be with us. Pop in the chat where you're joining us from, what you're taking away so far, and if you have any questions. And with that, I see some comments. So Shivani says, my strong belief is human connect is one of the most important factors in leadership as well as coaching. Yeah. How does that sit with you, Sarita?
I think she's got it very right. And if you stay in a silo, you stay in silos. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be unapproachable, nobody is going to approach you.
Mm.
But it takes a lot of courage from a leader to be approachable, right? Because that intersection of am I becoming too friendly,
Mm.
or do I stay a little aloof to show my power, my authoritativeness? That's a struggle that happens. And I think coaching helped me to sort of also become aware of how can you empathize with your team or with your partners and whom you work with. At the same time, be there to be seen as someone they can come to if they need help.
Mm. Mm.
That intersection, Meenakshi, is also not an easy one to
Yep.
hold,
Yep.
because the minute you cross that line and become one with them, the authoritativeness has gone away. So sometimes you really, I feel instead of balance, I like the word blend.
Mm.
How do you blend and come up with that right mix where you can be a little bit of both, because teams or clients sometimes look up to you for some guidance, for some suggestions, and you know how difficult in coaching it is to suggest, to guide. Right? And I think that's where the mentor hat comes in. I say, okay, let me remove this hat and put that hat on and just share with you what happened in my life.
Yeah.
So I think as coaches, we can dip into our own stories so much and share them and see how they resonate. And we are all human beings in the at the bottom of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. We also have a question from Shivani. How is seeking validation from others and confidence related?
I would say at one time they were, when I was young. I would I no longer can look at it. So it really is. I think it's how we are. How our upbringing has shaped us. In our society, it's all the time looking for approvals of parents, relatives, colleagues, principal, teacher, this and then, and we grew up believing that we get our confidence because of the validation, or because we are getting validation, we'll become confident. I no longer see a connection, because what do you control really? I think what you have in control are your own thoughts, your feelings, your ability to make a difference and to hold ground as a leader or as a human being or as a person. And for that, you don't need validation from anybody. The only person you need validation is from your own self. Are you happy? Are what you are doing, is it aligned with your own inner self, with your own values, what you believe in? I think that's the only validation, and that's where all the confidence comes from.
Mm. Thank you. That that was a lot of wisdom. That just made me think. Uh, I was just checking to see if there were any comments or questions. Shivani, hope that was helpful. Please chime in the chat and let us know.
It's not easy. Yeah, let me tell that to Shivani. All the time saying it's okay, but I don't agree with it, but I know I'm right. Because we do crave for validation. That's human nature. Right? But I think it's a journey where you
Hmm.
come to that point where you realize that you're only answerable to yourself
Hmm.
first and foremost.
True. And I want to connect this back to something you had shared earlier about being vulnerable, and as a leader, how much do you share, and feeling at some point you feel like you lose that sense of authority that you have with your team. And I wanted to bring in the dimension of our own intersectional identities, right? So as a woman, in my experience, I found it harder to maintain those sort of boundaries, for lack of a better word. um, and sometimes being open and being vulnerable with the team as a woman has not served me well, because then I had to sort of rein it back in to ensure that work is still getting done, that there's still decorum being maintained, and things like that. So I've had to sort of inspect and adapt on that quite a bit, even though I personally don't believe in this hierarchy within a team. Right? I'm here as a leader. I'm your advocate. So if there's, I don't care if there's one person or 100 people. I'm your advocate for the next level within the organization. That's how I view positional power, if you will. Um, and so, coming back to seeking validation and confidence being related, I have found that uh, my lived experience as a woman, the fact that I'm a woman, has had an impact on how much validation I seek and how much I allow that to drive my confidence. Um, so I wanted to hear from you about that as well, especially in the Indian context too.
You bring up an interesting point, but I feel being a woman has helped me on the contrary.
Hmm.
Prove to put my point across. And I think the whole DEI space, the gender equity inclusion space, and the way it has come up has given women that opportunity now
Okay.
to showcase them as something. What they bring on the table is so very unique, and they have a point, a different point to put forward, a different perspective. And I think I've been fortunate in that sense.
Hmm.
But maybe it was also has to do with the fact that 90% of people in communications are women. It's a chosen
Hmm.
profession. Maybe it has got something to do with that. Maybe you would find something that, maybe a hardcore sales or marketing person, woman, would perhaps resonate more with what you, the way he or she has to prove herself all the time to
Hmm.
retailers or wholesalers or things like that. But maybe in my field, I think I was just fortunate. Even in the social development sector, women are more prominent as leaders. So, and the minute there's a difference out there. So I think it's the profession that really helped me.
Hmm.
But having said that, I think we can use our gender to our, for lack of a better word, advantage, in the sense to really showcase our talents and the uniqueness of perspectives that we bring in.
Hmm.
There are ample studies and research that shows that having women around really enriches thinking, and
Yep.
brings in a convergence of different ideas, and it takes me back to what I just recently thought about, how in the team a woman, you know you look at the Hindu mythology, the holy trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So one is a creator, the other is a protector, and the other is a destroyer.
Yep.
Woman can bring in all those three elements together. You could create with your brainstorming ideas, new thoughts, new innovations, way of thinking. You could protect your flock, your team together, because the nurture in us is there. But you could also take up the destroyer piece and say, I want to relook at policies.
Hmm. Mm.
Let's look at accessibility. Let's look at inclusiveness, and let's redefine, destroy the old ways of working and bring in new ways.
Mm.
So I think we could position ourselves very, very effectively by looking at all aspects of what we bring on.
Mm. That was just brilliant, Sarita. That analogy with the Trinity in Hindu mythology, that was just brilliant. And I think um the energy that I was picking up was one of internal strength. And if we put our minds to it, then we as women have the potential to change the system. So that was very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. And I also thought that given your experience, your positive experience of being a woman in your space with and mine being different from that, I was happy that we were able to sort of bring that together in a conversation so people watching and listening now or later can get a sense of the whole sort of spectrum, if you will. And there might be some merit to the fact that it's a different industry. So I've always worked in the technology space, information technology, healthcare technology space. There are a lot of women, but it's a not so much in leadership positions. So it's the experience has been slightly different, and it could perhaps be attributed to that as well. Um, and I'm just taking a quick look at the comments. We have a response from Shivani, so what you shared earlier was helpful for her. So thank you, Shivani, and good luck. Um, Sarita, as we begin to wrap up our conversation today, although I know we can go on and on, but I wanted to sort of uh, start to conclude on this particular intersection of leadership and coaching. Um, what what are some challenges and opportunities at this intersection for leaders? There's so much conversation around leader as a coach, a manager as a coach, and so many companies are doing those sort of training programs, if you will. And there's a there's a lot of focus on building coaching as a skill set in corporate settings. So, what is your take on what are some of the challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, so I think we are living in the right times today. Right? My only concern is sometimes the so-called coaches who have not taken professional training and still call them as a coach. But that's another subject to be debated on another time.
Yes.
Yeah, and I feel every challenge out there is an opportunity. But I still feel that the we need to destigmatize coaching, especially around leadership and managers. And I'll give you an example. If I were an athlete, I would proudly say, Minakshi is my coach, she has trained me, and because of her, blah, 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 my stamina has increased, I can run and I can finish my race. Do you see a leader walking into the room and saying, Minakshi is my coach and she supports me in my leadership journey? I wait for that day. So I think that's the challenge and that's the opportunity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, and with so many corporates now picking up coaching and giving it to not just leadership, even at mid level, I'm hoping that this is the change that comes out, where
Hmm.
you walk in bravely and you acknowledge and say, Here is my coach. And
Hmm.
do not feel hesitant to say you have been coached in your life or you need coaching. It
Hmm.
does not matter which level you are. Even a CEO needs to be. Coaching is for all for coaching, coaching for all. So
Well said.
yeah, I think that's the challenge and the opportunity out there.
Oh my gosh, there's so much that can be talked about over there, and I wondered often. Uh, I think that it's changing now, so I am inspired. But a lot of times, coaching is seen as a remedial measure, especially in corporate settings, and I wonder if that's why there's this hesitation to acknowledge or admit openly that you have a coach that's working with you. And I I'm so glad you brought up the sports analogy because that's exactly what I wonder as well. Is a team even if it's an individual sport, a tennis player, for example, they don't drop their coach or they don't conclude on their coaching engagement just because they won the championship, right? They
Right.
just go on with it. And coaching uh, is really a journey from good to great, and it's ongoing. Uh, so yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up because uh, there is even the increase in exposure to coaching within corporate settings. What is the acceptance about around it? Yeah. Um, One last question that I have for you is, what are, in addition to what you already shared around curiosity, being non-judgmental, what is like one other thing that leaders can take from the world of coaching that will serve them well as leaders?
That's an easy one. Listen.
Say more.
Really, really listen. I would say they need to listen. They need to listen to the teams. They need to listen to what's happening and not just hear. And I also am guilty sometimes of, stopping sentences or answering before the question is over and all of that. I think we all have. Nobody taught us listening. How do you listen, right? Do you remember having a lesson on listening in school? All the moral science lessons that we had, listening was never part of it. So I think listening is one skill. I think coaching is very importantly emphasized a lot on that competency.
Yeah.
Listen attentively, and I think as leaders we need to work on it day in and out. In
Hmm.
fact, what I would say as my parting remark, we need to continue to have a beginner's mindset all the time
Hmm.
and not go out there as someone who knows so many things. Yeah, just go out there as a big. I don't know. I'm here to listen. I'm here to explore, and I'm curious. So stay with that.
Hmm. Very, very well said. Thank you so much, Sarita. And this was such a an inspiring conversation for me personally. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of everyone that watched us live and folks that will watch the recording later. This was just such a gift, and for me to start my day with this is absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much, and folks that. If you have just now joined us, well, we are concluding our conversation here at Exploring Intersections. We've been talking to Sarita Bahl, exploring the intersection of leadership and coaching. And Sarita has shared with us her journey on both sides of this intersection, if you will, and how she continues to take from one into the other and the other way around as well. And some key takeaways for me personally were how you talked about your personal life shaping your professional life, and the need for us as leaders to listen, to stay curious, and to remain non-judgmental, being self-aware. And these are things that we all hear about, but the key is how intentional are we in practicing all of these, and that's what Sarita has been talking to us about. So thank you all very much, and we'll be back with another episode of Exploring Intersections 2 weeks from today, so on the 21st of June. And we'll be talking to Angelina Baez, who is also a coach, and then she's on the health and wellness side, and she's a one of the um, big pieces of work that she does is helping leaders focus on their physical and mental health and well-being, and so that's the intersection we're going to explore in the next episode: physical and mental health. So come back and join us. And in the meantime, let us know if you have any questions for Sarita. Pop them in the comment section on LinkedIn and or on YouTube, and keep our conversations going. So once again, thank you so much, everyone. Take care and have a good rest of your day and week. Cheers. Bye for
Thank
now.
you. you, Meenakshi.
Thank you so much, Sarita.